Have you ever noticed that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one who speaks the least? A calm gaze amidst chaos and unpredictable silence sometimes makes the entire room wary. And do you wonder why it is precisely the lack of reaction, the absence of defense, that causes others to lose control? A lion does not roar before pouncing on its prey, and a truly strong man does not need to speak to be respected by others. While many people try to appear threatening with loud voices and noisy emotions, true strength lies in silence, unshaky, unpredictable, unshakable. And that is what truly makes others fear. Because what you cannot predict, you cannot control, and what you cannot control, you fear it. In this noisy world, the person who makes others wary is not the one who talks the most, but the one who says nothing yet still makes the entire room watch. The person whose silence does not mean indifference, but is observing, analyzing, and does not need to prove anything. That is the kind of presence you can train, not through tricks, not through rhetoric, but through 6 internal states derived from ancient Stoic spirit. These 6 states are designed to make opponents unable to read. You not knowing what you think, not knowing what you will do next, not knowing where the weakness is. And that is what makes them panic. They will expect a reaction, an outburst, an angry look, but you only respond with silence. And that moment is when everything begins to change. Because most people react instinctively. Someone insults, they get angry. Someone criticizes, they argue back. Someone provokes, they lose control. But in reality, such reactions are not strength, but you are letting others control your emotions. When you let others choose emotions for you, you have relinquished inner control. And precisely when you counterattack, scream, defend, is when you are telling the opponent that they have touched you. And that is what they want. But imagine another scenario. You do not react, you do not frown, you do not say a word. You just look back with a calm gaze, unreadable, unexpressed. Suddenly, they no longer know what is happening. Suddenly, they are the ones exposed. That is what makes them afraid. Not the noise, but the silence. Because in that silence, you force them to face themselves. You give them a mirror and force them to look into it. They want chaos, you return serenity. They want to fight, you give them silence. And silence never lies. Epictetus once said, "It is not important what happens to you. What matters is how you react to it." And when you can react with silence, with complete internal control, that is not weakness, that is victory. A silent but clear victory. I once knew a man like that. At first glance, he had nothing special. Quiet, calm, never spoke loudly. But then one day in a meeting room, a colleague publicly mocked him, called him outdated, criticized his ideas in front of everyone. But what happened next was clear evidence of the silent strength we are talking about. Let us continue. As you have just seen, true strength does not lie in retaliation, but in how you maintain yourself when facing provocation. In that tense meeting room, the man did not react as people usually do. He did not get angry, did not argue, did not even acknowledge the attack. He just looked up, looked straight at the person who tried to humiliate him, and calmly asked, "Are you done?" Then, without another word, he returned to the spreadsheet in front of him, continued his work as if nothing had happened. The entire room fell into silence. A heavy but clear silence. And the attacker, who had just loudly criticized, suddenly seemed smaller. He shrank not because he was refuted, but because he could not touch the other person's state of mind. That silence was not passive or weak. It was a clear message: you cannot shake me. You do not have the right to define who I am. And that is what no one expected: the strongest blow. Not the counterattack, but the immobility. Because a man who cannot be threatened cannot be controlled. A man who does not feel the need to prove anything is the one who makes the entire room wary. That is an unignorable presence. Train yourself to have such silence. Master the moments of pause before reacting. Let the world's anger wash over you while you remain still, steady like a mountain. Because in a world that encourages reaction, where everyone reflexively argues, justifies, it is precisely your non-reaction that becomes the strongest and most frightening move. There exists a type of presence that requires no introduction, seeks no attention, needs no display or dominance. It simply exists, still, steadfast, unapologetic for its existence, because it has been forged, not naturally endowed. And that presence, full of inner strength, makes others uneasy, because most people are hurried. Anxious talk excessively to mask insecurity. They move quickly, laugh loudly, try to occupy space with actions and sound. But a truly strong man does not need to do that. He does not seek approval, does not need admiring glances, does not try to be liked. He just stands there, alert, but not anxious, silent, yet fully present. And then, without anyone saying anything, the entire room begins to change. People lower their voices when speaking near him. They become more cautious with every word, even glance at him before finishing a sentence. Not because he commands, but because his presence makes them feel boundaries. That is power. Not the power of one who always needs to be heard, but the power of one who does not need to speak to be listened to. A power honed through discipline, observation, and restraint. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And the man with a presence as solid as a rock not only ignores enemies, he rises so high that they no longer know how to reach him. So what creates that admirable calmness? Is it innate or practiced? In the next section, we will delve deeper into one of the most fundamental principles to achieve this. Strength, mastering reactions before reactions master you. An unshakable presence does not come from volume or external appearance. It comes from within, from purposeful silence, from not reacting instinctively. And sometimes that very silence makes the entire room wary. I once knew a man named Ilias. He was not the type to easily draw attention in a crowd. Not tall, not dressed. Flamboyantly, never tried to be funny. He rarely smiled. But whenever he entered a room, almost effortlessly, all eyes stopped on him. Not because he tried to attract, but because he did not need to dot. Ilias moved slowly, as if every step he took was deliberate. He did not speak much, but every time he did, he held eye contact long enough to make others adjust their posture, as if being scrutinized deeply. Every movement, every word, even his silence, made others feel he was conveying something important, even if he did not say it. Elias worked in a high-stress industry where egos clashed, where meetings were filled with arguments, shouting, and everyone wanted to appear smarter than the rest. But amidst those sounds, Ilias chose silence. He sat there, observing. He waited until the atmosphere began to deplete. And then, with just one question, concise and precise, he silenced the entire room. Don't need to say much. No need to take up time. It was the calmness in his demeanor that made everyone pay attention. He did not make unnecessary gestures, did not express unnecessary emotions. He was a living reminder that in a world full of hasty reactions, silence is the real threat. Gradually, people began to fear that silence, because they could not understand what he was thinking. They did not know what he would do next. That silence made them feel exposed, as if being closely observed without a chance to resist. Because The person who makes others most afraid is not the one who shouts loudly, but the one who makes you unable to predict what they will do. That is the power of an unshakable presence. It makes manipulators cautious. It disrupts those accustomed to controlling through emotions. It makes the loudest mouths adjust their tone simply because you are present. No words needed, no attitude needed, just presence. So how do you build that aura? You stop performing. You no longer chase glances or applause. You breathe slowly, hold your head high, observe more than speak, and you practice not reacting until your very silence becomes the most resonant thing in the room. Because a man anchored in values, in clarity, in restraint, never needs to jostle to make an impact. The world will have to pause to catch up to his pace. And when that happens, you no longer need to declare your strength. You become that strength. There is a reason why people often insult you. Not always because they hate you, but sometimes because they are afraid of what you represent, afraid of the calmness they cannot possess, afraid of your progress, your independence, and especially afraid that you do not play by the emotional rules they set. They attack not with fists, but with words, not to win, but to drag you into their game, because they know one thing: insults are never about the truth. So what are they really about? In the next section, we will dissect the mechanism behind verbal attacks and how a wise man faces them without being hurt. There are people who feel uneasy just because you remain silent, because your calmness is something they cannot control. And that's when they start trying other attacks, deeper, more subtle, just to achieve one thing: make you lose control. Because those insults have never really been about you. They are always about control. They are created to shake your inner stability, to test whether they can shatter the peace you are maintaining. Their purpose has never been to be right, but to make you react, to make you lose what you have spent years building your composure. And just by reacting, just by wavering, even for a second, their game has won. They don't need you to collapse. They just need to see you stumble. Whether you respond with a clever retort or a completely justified anger, the only thing they care about is they have touched you. And thus they have taken away your most precious possession, your self-mastery. But what if you don't react? If you don't explain, don't resist, not even acknowledge the attack, then, at that moment, your silence will echo louder in their minds than any rebuttal you could think of. Because in that silence you are saying what every attacker fears to hear: you are not worthy of my response. And nothing hurts an attacker more than being ignored by the very person they tried to hurt. I once knew a woman named Clara. She worked in a toxic environment where rumors, covert competition, and office politics were the ways people asserted their positions. Clara had a colleague, the envious, bitter type who always needed to prove something. This person spent months secretly sabotaging Clara with subtle jabs, feigned humorous sarcasm, and comments. Just loud enough to hurt, but not enough to be caught. But Clara didn't fall into the trap. Not once. She didn't get angry, didn't rebut. She just smiled gently, took notes, and continued her work as if she hadn't heard anything. No matter how tense the meeting, she always left with the same calmness she brought in. Over time, something strange began to happen. The attacker became louder, more aggressive, trying harder to provoke. But the more she did, the more her pettiness and insecurity were exposed. And then one day, the room stopped laughing. No one responded anymore. Everyone was silent. Because when you keep throwing punches at an unshakable wall, you become the ridiculous one. Clara didn't retaliate, didn't need to expose. She just stood there, steady as a rock, letting her opponent stumble over her own distorted motives. That is the essence of Stoicism. No need to unmask. No need to argue. Just be calm enough that all attacks become meaningless. Let the ignorant reveal themselves through their own behavior. Let them lose themselves in the noise they create. And you just need to maintain your silence like a solid wall. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks ill of you, instead of defending yourself, say he obviously does not know me very well, since there are so many other faults he could have mentioned." A simple statement, but a silent counterattack. That's how you protect your peace without fighting. No need to react. Because when you don't need to defend yourself, there are only two possibilities. Either you have been completely defeated, or you are at such a high level that the battle can never reach you. And to be at that high level, you need one thing: the ability to pause before reacting. In the next section, we will delve into one of the most powerful Stoic skills, mastering the pause, where all true power begins. Like Clara, like Elias, those who can maintain composure amidst chaos not only confuse opponents, but also become figures they cannot grasp. And from that silence, a very special kind of power begins to emerge. Let your silence be the only answer. Let your self-respect become something untouchable. And if one day someone insults, you smile not because you don't feel hurt, but because it's not important enough to shake you. People often fear what they cannot predict. They will never admit it, but the truth is, the harder you are to read, the more formidable you become. Because all control begins with information. What you say, what you share, what you reveal can all become tools in others' hands if they intend to manipulate. They don't listen to understand. They listen to map emotions, to remember weaknesses, habits, fears, anger, and desires, all of which can become levers against you. Every explanation you give, every moment you let your guard down, is another slice added to the diagram. They are silently constructing dot. But when you know how to hold back, act without announcing, step forward without leaving footprints you have entered. The most terrifying state, becoming the enigma. Insult is never about the truth. So what is it really about? In the next section, we will dissect the mechanism behind verbal attacks and how a wise man faces them without being hurt. There are people who feel uneasy just because you remain silent, because your calmness is something they cannot control. And that's when they start trying other attacks, deeper, more subtle, just to achieve one thing: to make you lose control, because those insults were never really about you. They have always been about control. They are created to shake your stability, to see if they can shatter the peace you are holding. Their purpose has never been to be right, but to make you react to, make you lose what you have spent years building: calmness. And as long as you react, as long as you waver, even for a second, their game has won. They don't need you to collapse. They just need to see you slip. Whether you respond with a clever retort or a completely justified anger, the only thing they care about is they have touched you. And thus they have taken away the most precious thing you have: self-mastery. But what if you don't react? If you don't explain, don't resist, not even acknowledge the attack? Then at that moment, your silence will echo louder in their minds than any rebuttal you could think of. Because in that silence you are saying what every attacker fears to hear: you are not worthy of my response. And nothing hurts an attacker more than being ignored by the very person they tried to hurt. I once knew a woman named Clara. She worked in a toxic environment where gossip, covert competition, and office politics were the ways people asserted their positions. Clara had a colleague, the envious, bitter type, who always needed to prove something. This person spent months subtly sabotaging Clara with cleverly veiled jabs, feigned humorous sarcasm, and comments just loud enough to hurt, but not enough to be caught. But Clara didn't fall into the trap. Not once. She didn't get angry, didn't retort. She just smiled lightly, took notes, then continued her work as if she hadn't heard anything. No matter how tense the meeting, she always left with the same calmness she brought in. Over time, something strange began to happen. The attacker became louder, more aggressive, trying harder to provoke. But the more she did, the more she revealed her pettiness and insecurity. And then one day, the room no longer laughed. No one responded anymore. Everyone was silent. Because when you keep throwing punches at a wall that never moves, you become ridiculous. Clara didn't counterattack. No need to expose. She just stood there steady as a rock, letting her opponents slip on their own distorted motives. That is the essence of Stoicism. No need to unmask. No need to argue. Just be calm enough for every attack to become meaningless. Let the ignorant reveal themselves through their own behavior. Let them lose themselves in the noise they create. And you just need to hold onto your silence like a solid wall. Epictetus once said, if someone speaks ill of you, instead of defending yourself, say, he obviously does not know me well, since there are so many other faults he could have mentioned. A simple sentence, but a wordless counterattack. That's how you protect your peace without fighting. No need to react. Because when you don't need to defend yourself, only two possibilities arise. Either you have been completely defeated, or you are on a level so high that the battle can never reach you. And to be on that level, you need one thing, the ability to pause before reacting. In the next section, we will delve into one of the most powerful Stoic skills, mastering the pause, where all true strength begins. Like Clara, like Elias, those who can remain calm amidst chaos not only confuse their opponents, but also become the figure they cannot grasp. And from that silence, a very special kind of power begins to emerge. Let your silence be the only answer. Let your self-respect become something no one can touch. And if one day someone insults you, smile not because you don't feel hurt, but because it's not important enough to shake you. People often fear what they cannot predict. They will never admit it, but the truth is, the harder you are to read, the more formidable you are, because all control begins with information. What you say, what you share, what you reveal can all become tools in the hands of others if they intend to manipulate. They don't listen to understand. They listen to map emotions, to remember weaknesses, habits, fears, anger, and desires, all of which can become levers against you. Every explanation, every moment you let your guard down is another slice added to the diagram they are silently constructing. But when you know how to hold back, know how to act without announcing, know how to take a step without leaving a footprint, then you have entered the most terrifying state, becoming a puzzle no one can solve, becoming an unpredictable storm. And in that unpredictability, you seize the initiative, not through mind games, but through distance. No need to lie, no need to deceive anyone. Just don't reveal everything. Between you and the world, keep a haze. An area no one can guess, no one can touch. That is the safest shelter for your inner freedom. Stoics understand this well. They don't live to attract attention. They don't broadcast their desires outward. Every action has a reason, but not always needs explanation. They give appropriately, but never everything. Because everything you reveal sooner or later, someone will find a way to exploit. Philosopher Seneca once wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." And sometimes silence is not just a smart choice, but also a solid form of defense. I once met a man named Caleb. He wasn't loud, nor did he try to appear important. His voice was gentle, demeanor calm. He hardly ever shared too much about himself. When someone asked something personal, Caleb just smiled, said a few gentle words, then skillfully changed the subject. He wasn't cold, just discreet. Some called him mysterious. Others thought he was arrogant. But over time they stopped judging and began to respect. Because they didn't know what made Caleb uncomfortable, what hurt him, what he desired. And when you can't guess someone's mind, you can't manipulate their emotions. That's why when the workplace started to become chaotic, when pressure arose, when rumors spread like wildfire, Caleb still stood firm. Not because he was too strong, but because no one knew how to touch his weak points, because no one had ever seen his emotional blueprint. He moved like a shadow, silent but influential. And that made people fear what he might do, not because he had done it, but because no one knew his boundaries. That's the power of unpredictability. People can't break what they don't understand, and you can't hurt what you can't touch. So if you truly want to build an invulnerable mental armor, start with something simple. Stop sharing everything. In the next section, we will explore another depth of mastery, where you not only control your words, but also control intentional silence. When you stop revealing too much about yourself, when you know how to keep a part of your inner self for yourself, it's not weakness. It's a deliberate choice to protect the most precious thing, your self-control. Because a man who knows how to keep things to himself is not trying to hide weaknesses. He is preserving power, the power of silence, the power of unpredictability. And the world, no matter how noisy, still has no effective weapon to confront a man who walks in silence, who holds his truth like a sword sheathed only when truly necessary. The rest, he lets others burn their own energy in efforts to guess, analyze, trying to read something that doesn't exist outside his own will. In an age where everyone talks, silence becomes rare and frightening. We live in an era where people can't sit still for a day without updating something. Goals, plans, achievements, even changes that haven't happened are all displayed on social media. They talk about what they will do before even starting. They confuse attention with progress. They think being heard is success. But at first, no one paid attention to her. Some even thought she was bland, lacking personality, but then, one day, her name was mentioned not because of words, but because of actions. Samira was the one who quietly built a system that saved the company millions of dollars. Each year, Rand, when everyone looked up to find her, Samira was already gone. She had been promoted, transferred to another department, moving to a level that those still busy talking could never catch up. With that is the power of silent action. It transfers power without prior notice. It creates results without justification. And it confuses enemies, not because they didn't see you coming, but because they forgot to guard against you. So if you want to build such a kind of strength, one that doesn't need to shout but still commands respect, start today. Be silent, work, disappear, and then reappear with results in. The next section, we will delve deeper into the art of controlling reactions, where a man doesn't need to speak, yet still causes the entire room to change its tone. When you choose silence and let actions speak, you not only surprise others, but also plant in them a vague worry, not knowing what your next step will be. And that unpredictability is what makes you formidable. Because when you act without prior notice, you not only avoid resistance, but also instill a silent fear in the opponent. Not the fear of what you declare you will do, but the fear of what you can do but don't say. And that silence, that tension, that mysterious quality becomes stronger than any words or arguments. There is something unsettling when facing someone who doesn't need approval, doesn't seek validation from others, especially in a world designed around likes, applause, and social acceptance. Most people learn to soften themselves, to avoid offending anyone, forcing a smile, When not happy, nodding, even when disagreeing, shrinking personal beliefs to fit in with the crowd. And because of that, the only person who doesn't do that, the one who enters with their true self, not bowing, not avoiding, becomes a threat. Not because they are aggressive or confrontational, but because their authentic presence exposes the falseness of those around. They don't need to speak, they just need to exist, and that truth is enough to make many uncomfortable, because authenticity is always confrontational, especially when placed next to falseness. When you stop trying to fit in, you not only free yourself, but also unintentionally force others to face the part of themselves they have sacrificed for convenience. I once knew a man named Jace. He wasn't the type to speak loudly, not irritable, not quarrelsome, but he had a very special way of making others feel uneasy, not because he tried, but because he was always present, clearly and authentically. He never adjusted his tone to please, didn't follow trends, wore what he wanted, said what he thought, and when others were busy gossiping, he chose silence, not out of fear, but because he lived by principles. Some people avoided Jace. Some said he was cold. Some thought he considered himself superior. But the deeper truth is they weren't afraid of him. They feared the helpless feeling when standing next to someone who dared to live true to themselves. Because he didn't need to prove anything just by existing as he was steadfastly, he was enough to make all the falseness around waver. That is the paradox of authenticity. It doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it just stands there calmly and firmly, like a mirror forcing others to look back at themselves. Stoicism has long taught that we should live according to our nature. Not because of societal expectations, not because of crowd pressure, just virtue, just integrity, just the alignment between what you think, what you believe, and what you do, even when that makes you the strange one, especially when that makes you different. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste time arguing about what a good man should be. Instead, be one." In the next section, we will explore how Stoics cultivate inner control that enables you to live authentically and steadfastly through all challenges. Become such a person, one who does not need to persuade others to understand him, one who does not bend to fit the energy of the room, and who does not seek agreement or praise. Just be yourself, steady, unshakable, unapologetic for your identity. In a world driven by performance and productivity, authenticity becomes frightening. Authenticity makes people uneasy because it reflects all the compromises they have made with themselves. If you truly want to become a force, not through noise, but through depth, then it is time to stop apologizing for your true self. Do not make yourself more palatable, just to be accepted. Do not dull your sharpness, speed, or brilliance just because it makes someone uncomfortable. Speak less, but make every word count. Learn to say no clearly when necessary, and when something is over, walk away. Do not cling, do not explain. And especially never apologize for the standards you set, as long as you uphold those standards for yourself first. When you live this way, not swayed by attention, not performing for recognition, you not only attain peace, you move with a pressure, a kind of force that makes the weak adjust their masks. Just because you look their way, you do not need to speak, no need to threaten, no need to beg for respect, yet your presence still makes others hesitate, speculate, even fear, not because of what you have done, but because you give them nothing to grasp, leaving everything to their perception. You do not need to fight your enemies. You become the kind of person who confuses enemies just by being present. No noise, no drama, just a silence forged through years of discipline and inner control. Because the man who makes others uneasy in the room is not the loudest, but the one who does not need to say anything. So do not shout, do not rush to explain, do not be eager for recognition. Let your silence speak. Let the boundaries you set resonate without needing to be drawn with words. Let that silence cause losses they never anticipated. And by the time others begin to understand who you are, you have become a silent, focused, and untouchable Entity, a force that needs no advertisement. If these words resonate with something deep inside you, if you feel you are entering a more mature, stronger phase, where silence is your power, leave a comment. No need to explain, no need to justify, just keep moving forward. And if you feel this is your journey, click subscribe. Not because someone asked you to, but because you are no longer ordinary. Welcome to the world of silent strength.